So the Chancellor says he wants to double the number of first-time buyers so that by the end of the next Parliament, if they're elected, 500,000 people a year are getting a foot on the housing ladder. Well, Mr Osborne joins me now from Brentford in West London. And very good morning to Chancellor. Well, let's talk about that pledge, that aspiration for first-time buyers. Of course, if you want to double that number of first-time buyers, you've got to have something to sell to them at reasonable prices. And there just frankly aren't enough houses around.
Well, I agree with you. We do need to build more homes. We need to make sure all those brownfields in our cities and towns are being used for that purpose. And then we've got to help people get on the housing ladder, and things like extending the Help to Buy scheme, the work we've done with the new Help to Buy ISA to help people save for their first home, and tragically Labour now say they want to undo that. And then crucially, to answer your question directly, make sure there are homes people can afford, and our new starter homes plan. There's a very exciting piece of news, which is that over 50,000 people have registered for this. This is new homes that are cheaper for first-time buyers, and that scheme will really take off in the next Parliament.
But as Chancellor, you understand the laws of supply and demand. Well, we certainly hope so. And if you build more houses, you've got to say to some people who already own them, then the value of their house is going to fall.
Well, we do need to build more homes in this country. You know, I'm a great believer in a home-owning nation, a home-owning democracy where families can get on that housing ladder. And the truth is that the number of first-time buyers has fallen steadily over recent years. And I want to reverse that. And I want to help families get on that housing ladder. Of course, there are also people who've got homes. And we want to make sure we don't have a housing market that lurches from boom to bust. And we've got a new watchdog in the Bank of England that monitors the house market, monitors what's happening to prices, and indeed last year did step in when they thought things were in danger of becoming a bubble, and took some action around things like mortgage standards, which actually took the froth out of the housing market, proving that our new system is a lot more effective than the system we inherited.
Well, something which might put a bit more froth into the housing market is, of course, the new pension freedoms, which are coming into effect very soon. Are you a genuine convert to this process to allow people almost unlimited access to their own pensions pot, or have you done it because there's a general election looming and the focus groups told you to do something for savers?
Well, no, tomorrow is Pensions Freedom Day, and this is a revolution that is going to improve the retirement for millions of people. It's an act of deliberate policy, part of our economic plan, that says to people who have worked hard and saved hard, we trust you with your savings, and I would urge people to make use of the free guidance service we have and see how they can benefit from these unprecedented reforms. They are part of an economic plan that is moving our country away from being reliant on debt onto an economy that invests and saves for its future.
But it's a U-turn, isn't it? In your 2011 budget, you cut the capped drawdown rate to prevent people running out of money. Now you're doing precisely the opposite.
No, we took some steps, actually, right at the beginning of the Parliament to change some of the automatic rules on annuities. But I realised as the Parliament went on, actually, with the economy improving, with our determination not just to fix what went wrong in the crash, but to fix some of the things that have been wrong in the British economy for many, many years, we could go much further. And this is a real revolution. It comes into effect at midnight tonight. It's one of the biggest changes to pensions in 100 years. And what it means is that people who have worked hard and saved hard can have access to their pension savings. It is their money. Again, it's based on the conservative belief that you trust people with their own money. And we also provide this free guidance service. There's a website, there's telephone advice, face-to-face meetings, which will start next week, to help people make sure they make the right choices about their future.
But don't you think with some of the large amounts of money that are sloshing around, they need a bit more than a phone call and guidance? You talk about access to their own pension pots. Some dodgy advisors might get access to those pension pots, and we could be looking at PPI or worse all over again.
Well, no, this is, of course, a properly regulated industry, and the Financial Conduct Authority, our new consumer watchdog, is making sure that the advice is good advice, that the guidance is there. But what we're providing
pay for that advice, don't they, Chancellor?
Not just
people will have to pay for that advice.
No, well, actually, the guidance that the government is offering is free. So there is a website with a very large number of people who have already accessed. Then, if people want to have more in-depth guidance, they can arrange either a phone call where they sit down for a long period of time with someone to talk through their retirement plans and how much money they've got in their pension, or, as of next Tuesday, you can sit down with the Citizens Advice Bureau. I've asked them to perform this role, and they're very happily agreed to do so, and have face-to-face sessions with people. So people making these choices are going to have access to free government guidance in an area which is properly regulated by the new consumer watchdog we have set up. But I have to say, a lot of it is based on this sort of rather patronising assumption, a lot of these questions, that people shouldn't have access to the money that they themselves have worked hard for and saved hard for.
Back to 2011, isn't it? That's back to the income drawdown rules you brought in 2011. Wasn't that patronising then?
No, as I say, when we came into office, we actually relaxed some of the rules that existed that said you had to take out an annuity. But we've now gone much, much further. This is a complete revolution. It starts, as I say, at midnight. Tomorrow is Pensions Freedom Day. And as a result of deliberate conservative policy, trusting people with their own money, trusting people who've worked hard and saved hard with access to their own savings, we're going to be able to improve the retirement of millions and millions of people.
All right, let me ask you about the SNP. And it is the case, isn't it, that with this election looming, you see it as a great opportunity, don't you? The Scottish National Party doing so well against Labour, they deprive them of 40-odd seats or something like that. You're in cahoots with them, aren't you? And in actual fact, ultimately, you're playing fast and loose with the union.
Well, no, I don't accept that at all. I think the outstanding leader in Scotland at the moment is Ruth Davidson, the Conservative leader, and she has really proved herself not just in the referendum campaign last year, but in this general election. What is clear, however, in this general election is that there will be an unholy alliance between the Labour Party and the SNP, between the people who want to bankrupt the country and the people who want to break up the country. And if anyone is in any doubt, they won't be after that TV debate. They can see who would be the weak leader in that arrangement, Ed Miliband, who would be the strong leader, Nicola Sturgeon, and indeed Alex Salmond as well in Westminster. And therefore we'd have higher debt, higher taxes, weaker defences, because of the Scottish nationalists propping up Ed Miliband, and that is not what the country wants.
I'm asking you about the union, though, Chancellor.
For the country's economy.
When it comes to the security of the union, the Labour Party are a unionist party with a small u. They support the union. Wouldn't you rather see a Labour MP elected than an SNP one?
Well, I want a Conservative MP elected, and there are Conservatives standing in all those constituencies with a very strong leader in Ruth Davidson. But, well, I don't think you should prejudge the election, but I make this observation. You're absolutely right. The fact that the Labour Party, which was a party that campaigned for the United Kingdom in the referendum, is contemplating an arrangement with the SNP who want to break up the country, I think is deeply disturbing. And people know that Ed Miliband is weak, that the Scottish nationalist leaders are much stronger than he is, and we know who would be running that government, and that would be bad for the entire United Kingdom, bad for the integrity of the union, but also bad for our economy, because it would mean higher debts and higher taxes. And so here in West London, in Chiswick and Isleworth, this is as much on the ballot paper as it is in Glasgow or Edinburgh.
Well, let me ask you about your attitude to the union. I mean, if the SNP, as expected, do very well in this Westminster campaign, do very well then in the Scottish parliamentary elections, if you're in government for the next parliament and you're approached by Nicola Sturgeon and she says, right, we think we have the mandate now, it was in our manifesto for the Scottish elections, for another referendum, would you rule out any legislation from Westminster to allow that?
Well, I think that issue has been settled. Indeed, Alex Salmond himself said that the issue had been settled for a generation. We had the referendum. Obviously, it was a hard-fought and well-argued campaign, but there was a clear majority of people in Scotland who wanted to stay in the United Kingdom. Obviously, I was very pleased with that result. But I think that issue has now been settled, and I think even if you listen to the SNP leaders, they're not talking about that at the moment. What they are talking about is the extra debts, the extra taxes, the weaker defences they want to impose on the whole United Kingdom. And that is a reason why we should be absolutely concerned about them propping up a weak Ed Miliband government.
Let me ask you about those weak air defences. You, of course, refer to the eventual replacement for Trident. Do you want to see a like-for-like replacement, and that based in Faslane?
Yes, is the short answer to that question.
Very good. Straight answers to straight questions. Let's continue in that vein because, of course, the Prime Minister did that at that last session of Prime Minister's Questions, didn't he, when he ruled out the issue of a VAT rise. Something else Labour are suggesting today, let me ask you about that, is that if you are elected, you may well further cut the higher rate of tax from 45 pence as it stands now to 40p. Can you rule that out?
Well, that's not our plan. Our priority is to increase. Well, as I say, you can judge us by what we say we want to do. And what we want to do is increase the tax-free personal allowance to £12,500, so people full-time on the minimum wage don't have to pay income tax and millions of people are better off. And when it comes to higher-rate taxpayers, our priority is increasing the threshold at which you pay that higher rate, the 40p rate, to £50,000. Now, those are our big tax commitments for the coming Parliament.
But hold on, that's only about priorities. When you get that done, you can get to the lesser issues, perhaps cutting that higher rate back to where it was.
Well, as I was saying, if that was our priority or our plan, we would have made it part of our plan and made it one of our priorities. Our priorities are, as I've just set out, to increase the tax-free personal allowance, to increase the higher rate threshold to £50,000, and that's a task we've set ourselves to achieve over the coming Parliament. It's a big, ambitious goal, but it's all part of an economic plan, a balanced plan to grow our economy, get our public finances in order, make work pay by cutting taxes for working people, and increase spending on the NHS each year.
Chancellor, no, it is just the issue of straight answers to straight questions. 5 years ago, you used exactly that formulation about the issue of VAT. No plans to raise VAT. And you said it. And then you got into government. You said, right, the books are so bad, we have to put VAT. No plans doesn't mean to say you're ruling it out altogether.
Well, I'm telling you what our priority is, and we've made a big tax-cutting priority. And that's what we're absolutely 100% focused on delivering and achieving, not because it's a nice thing to have, it's because it's central to our economic plan and making work pay. And of course, tomorrow, alongside the pensions reform, we have another big step in the right direction with the increase in the personal allowance to £10,600. Again, 25 million working people will be better off because of the Conservative economic plan.
Well, we were doing straight answers to straight questions. We didn't quite get one there. What about this defence spending pledge? 2% of GDP will be spent in a future Conservative-led government. Will it on defence?
Well, that's what we're spending right now.
And that's a pledge.
And of course, that was the commitment in the NATO agreement, the conference in Wales that we organised. And I don't think anyone should be in any doubt about our commitment, both myself and of course our Prime Minister David Cameron, to strong national security, which is why we've set out plans to increase the equipment budget, making sure our armed forces have the very latest and best equipment to defend themselves and protect our country and its interests overseas. But ultimately you can't have strong national security without a strong economy. Anyone looking at the world can see if your economy is weak, then you're not able to defend your national interests as well as when your economy is strong. So fixing the economy
again, Chancellor, people listening will be saying it's not quite a firm pledge. All you've got to say is we will spend 2% of GDP or more on the defence budget.
Well, we are spending 2% of
but it's not
GDP on the defence budget. Well, as I say, we made a commitment at NATO. We are spending it today. We've made a clear commitment to the future of the equipment budget to increase that in real terms, spend £160 billion, which is a pretty large sum of money, on giving our RAF and our Navy and our Army the very latest equipment they need. And indeed, we've made commitments on the size of the armed forces. So we've made those commitments, but on the ballot paper is this choice. Do you want to have the strong economy that is going to deliver the strong national security and indeed a strong NHS and the like? Or do you want to go back to the chaos of the past, the unemployment, the high debts, the high taxes and the like from Ed Miliband?
And Mr Osborne, do you have any plans to stand for the Conservative leadership when Mr Cameron stands down?
Well, look, I want to be the Chancellor Exchequer after the election. That's David Cameron's decision. And of course, it's the British public's decision about whether they return a Conservative government. But David Cameron is standing to be the Prime Minister for the next 5 years. There's a huge amount to be done to finish the job of fixing our economy, and I want to be integral to that.
But as you know, as Ian Duncan Smith said last week, he can't stand for a full 5 years. If you win, you've got to bed in a new leader and a new Prime Minister, and you're on the Prime Minister's list. Presumably you would stand when that happens.
Well, as I say, the leadership I'm interested in is the leadership of David Cameron. He's committed to being the Prime Minister for the next 5 years. Of course, it's up to the British people now in the next month or so to make that decision of whether they want the strong leadership, the economic competence of David Cameron, or the weak leadership and the economic chaos that Ed Miliband represents, whatever he writes on those notes.
OK, are we going to see you in a head-to-head debate with the Shadow Chancellor, with Ed Balls? Just you and him?
Well, look, I want to have a TV debate with Ed Balls. And Ed Miliband had his debate last week and didn't do very well. Ed Balls, well, I want to have that debate. We've got a format that worked well. That was the format which worked at the last general election. I'm happy to take part in that format. I've spoken to Danny Alexander. He's happy to take part in that format. The broadcaster concerned, the BBC, is happy to run that format. We've got a date, we've got a time, so let's get on with that Chancellor's debate. I don't know why Ed Balls is running scared of it.
It's not head-to-head.
Well, we've got, as I say, Danny Alexander, myself, Ed Balls taking part in that debate. I don't know why he doesn't want to take part in it, Ed Balls. I don't know why he's running scared of it. He'd have to answer those questions himself.
OK, Chancellor, thank you very much indeed. George Osborne there.